Hey, this is Chuck Rowe from Midwest Studies Group. Thanks for joining us again for another edition in our video series. Today, we're going to talk about nonprofits and how they can outsource some of their HR duties. Today, I'm joined by Michael Duscher from BerganKDV. Thanks for joining us today, Michael.
Thanks for having me, Chuck. Great to be here.
So I wanted to talk a little bit with you about specifically outsourcing payroll and timekeeping help. The day of punching in that paper time clock is slowly shrinking. What newer technologies are you using and seeing these days?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's been a lot of advancements in the last 5 to 7 years, Chuck, in terms of processing employees' timesheets. And really, the first and foremost, without going too far into the weeds here, is electronic. And electronic basically kind of means today's terms. It essentially means web-based time capturing of employees' timesheets versus the old paper way.
So did you see an increase of employers and schools and nonprofits using systems like these ever since COVID came and people started working more from home?
Yeah, COVID has had a dramatic impact on just anything remote, right? And with the time and labor aspect of things, employers have concerns about, what is the process? How do I capture the timesheets for employees if they were a prior or a current paper environment, right? So some of the concerns are the capturing. Is it accurate? What happens if somebody calls in sick? How do you handle those type of things? And really, the electronic format is really kind of, it's streamlined that whole process. And then there's also a process, Chuck, called geofencing. Now with the technology that the electronic systems have, that we have at BerganKDV, there's a geofencing. So you can actually lock down an employee's location on where they're punching in. So that just really helps with the timestamps and other auditing data that employers are concerned about.
Well, I know one of the things that you brought up is keeping track of the time, right? And one of the things that I know a lot of nonprofits and probably every organization out there struggles with the paper is that you just manually counting up those hours and then finding out how much how much time was taken for this or that and everything. And then another employee says, well, really, I was over here and there, and now they have to manually do all the math. And when they finally do pass things over to you and say, gosh darn, I'm so glad I don't need to worry about this manual math anymore. How much time are they, like when you hear feedback, how much time are they saving from using you compared to when they were trying to do it themselves? Do people tell you?
Yeah, that's usually where the rubber meets the road is the time savings factor when clients come to us. So we essentially kind of do a critical analysis of their process. We look at it, we break it down, and then we strive to improve, obviously, right? So each organization is a little bit different because they have different employees, different levels of complexity, with the grants and the fundings and whatnot, and how that all ties together. But to answer your question, on average, we're saving about 25% of time and labor just in the processing of manual versus electronic time cards.
That's absolutely amazing. So now I assume there needs to be some sort of interaction between you and a nonprofit organization because they still need to maybe confirm some numbers with you, or I don't really know how the process works, but I guess that's what I'm asking you is what is the commitment as far as amount of time that groups still need to spend time with you each week?
Well, there's a nonprofit that we just brought on board not that long ago, 22 employees, and they were taking on average of 6 to 8 hours a week in collecting time. And what we've done is we've reduced that to literally, we've kind of spread it out throughout the pay period, but we've broke that down to about an hour per pay period in terms of their time involvement and actually approving the timesheets.
Okay. And another, issue that often comes up is when a group keeps track of their own time, but then they have to go to a group like BerganKDV for their payroll. Sometimes there's some hiccups there because maybe things don't get to each other in time, or maybe there was an employee that had a question about their hours, but since now there's this communication that needs to go back and forth. How much easier, or do you notice a difference when the timekeeping and the payroll is happening at the same place, like everything's happening with Bergen?
Yeah, and it's dramatic, to be quite honest with you. The process improvement and the time savings. For example, a manual process. Do you have the employees sign off on their time cards? Are they actually literally signing off on their time cards? Are they approving it? Most employers don't, and the Department of Labor would probably frown against that practice. So with the electronic, the web-based system that we have, employees get a notification. Everything is literally workflowed to the employee, to the manager, and then to the approver. So the employee gets to sign off on their own time card. They get a notification, and then boom, they sign off on their time card. The manager gets to approve it, and then the administrator gets to approve it. So by the time it gets to us, then everything is already approved at that point. The paper environment is a lot more chaotic. When you have hours and you have PTO and vacation hours after it's given to us, that can create lots of problems, not only for the organization, not only for BerganKDV, but also for the employer or the employee, because the employee may have to, as a result of being late, may have to wait till the next paycheck to get those adjusted earnings.
Well, one thing that came to mind when you were talking about your process is that since it is web based, and since in theory you could mail paychecks to the organization, and then I'm sure the apps, those are on people's phones, right? Is that what happens? And so in theory, an organization that wants to use these services with you, they don't need to be located like next to your office. I mean, it could be someone out of town that could use Bergen.
Well, yeah, and we have companies and organizations across the country that use us. And matter of fact, I had two last summer. I had calls from two of our customers who actually process payroll on the beach. So from that standpoint, and it was a wow experience, and that's really what we drive. We drive to not a good, not a great, but literally a wow experience. And technology has really kind of allowed us to take that next step, but that has a ripple effect. So it allowed us to take it, but it allows all of our clients to take that next step in terms of convenience. And that's really what technology, that's the bottom line with technology, is driving home convenience for the employee, the employer, and also as a payroll processor, us.
Well, apparently the two of us need to change the locations of our offices. So you let me know when you want to move down to the beach somewhere and set up a new office, and I'll join you.
Yeah, we need to geographically narrow it down, and anywhere warm, Chuck, is good with me.
Yeah. So, well, there's going to be some folks that no matter what we do on this video and no matter how much they talk to you, they're just wanting to do their stuff in-house. And that's not going to change for those people. If you can give some tips on how someone could better be efficient with their timekeeping or with their payroll, what kind of advice would you give those folks?
For an in-house provider, I would literally, nothing's changed. I'm a process guy. Okay. So I like to have a process, a defined process, and then I like to have a tool that really drives that process. And really that just talks to the whole business continuity aspect of things. So whether you're outsourcing payroll or you have payroll in-house, it goes back to what we said earlier, and it's technology. And, there are technologies out there, if you're doing payroll in-house, that providers can bring in and still do payroll in-house. Most in-house timekeeping or most in-house payroll processing systems, they don't have a time and labor system that's, they don't have one, period, or it's not very robust. And we help out where we can actually come in and just do the time and labor and let our clients process payroll. So we can step in at at any realm of the payroll process, HR, time and labor, or payroll. We're not a be all necessarily to everything, to everyone.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned is that you do a form of an audit to help figure out what kind of time savings you would be giving folks and how you could help them. When there are these organizations that are going back and forth on should I start outsourcing this or should I do it in-house? Obviously, one of the things you brought up is that you might, there's no promise, but you might save about 25% on average of your time from outsourcing. What are some other pros and cons that organizations should consider when deciding whether to outsource or not?
Yeah, I think it's personnel. Personnel is the first thing that kind of comes to mind. I mean, today's world now, people are wearing more hats. They're they're either a hybrid environment where they're coming to and from work, or they're at home. You know, they're that remote environment. So as people and companies experience whatever this new normal is really about their employees, and thinking about employee retention is always very important. So when you can take a load or responsibility or burden off an employee, just the effect that it has on the employee retention is pretty remarkable. And I've seen it across organizations. I've seen it in the public and private sector. So that's the first thing that really kind of comes to mind. You know, it's really, I go back to what my being a process guy. I think that if you have a process and you have a tool to manage that process, that's the thing that organizations need to talk about. And then just the total inefficiencies that really happen when you're doing anything manual today.
Well, whether you're a nonprofit, a government organization, a school, a charter school, a private school, whatever, it doesn't matter if you're close to a Bergen KDV location or not. They could call you about this service, like we talked about. Um, if those organizations wanted to specifically talk to Bergen KDV about these services, how is the best way for them to learn more?
Well, to go to our website, that would be the start. To contact you or myself would be a good way to really just kind of engage in conversation. We come with the approach that we listen. We have a very dedicated process, what we call the engage process, and that's where we sit back and we listen to our prospects and to our clients. We need to know what challenges, what issues, what problems they're facing, and we put all the cards on the table. And that's our approach. So we come from that standpoint of a true collaboration. So yeah, a great place to start would be, contact you, Chuck, or me, or go to the Bergen KDV website.
And Michael, I'm just going to throw this question out left field for you here because I'm just kind of curious of the answer is why is it that you personally enjoy working with nonprofits and schools and government organizations so much?
I came from the private side. Okay. And I didn't, quite honestly, I didn't know if I would like the public and nonprofit side. A funny thing happened on my first meeting. I fell in love. I fell in love with the passions, the missions, the people of the nonprofit, and public and private, the public side of things, and the education side. It's literally in a period of less than 3 years. The passion grabbed onto me day one and hasn't let go. So it's really where I get up in the morning. Why I get up in the morning is I'm solving people's problems. I'm doing everything I can to help them, and really be that conduit to making each organization ultimately better.
Well, I know a lot of organizations that do work with you. I know they appreciate all the work that you do for them because you are able to bring a professional side of things on personnel wise that they're not able to do themselves. So thank you for your service and why you enjoy working with these types of organizations. And thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Chuck, thank you so much for having me. Great interview. Thank you.
And everyone else, thanks for watching. Chuck Rowe, Midwest Studies Group. Catch you next time.